Tell me about what you thought of this script the first time you saw it. You read it, not just when you saw it.
I thought the characters were, you know, difficult in an interesting way, in a way that they provoked answers that were complex, that weren't just cut and dry, that they're not black and white sort of characters, they're presented with some real complexity. And for me personally, the idea of playing, you know, really flawed people is always more interesting. And the potential for a person who's really flawed to have to deal with really difficult circumstances, I think, is really interesting. And an opportunity to tell stories about Appalachia, which I think is just one of the most extraordinary places, you know, culturally and in terms of its history, in terms of what it says about America. I think it's a really interesting place to tell stories about.
Yeah, you know, for me it was a little bit different because the character I was being asked to do was not so subtle and definitely flawed, but not so complex. And I had to really think about whether I wanted to do that character or not. The thing that drew me to it was all the other characters and the world, and you know, feeling like this is different than something we've seen before. And if I was going to play a character in that world, I wanted to make sure that he really was of that world.
And I think, thank God, that you took this role on too as well, because I think, you know, as you're saying, someone else might have taken that character and really just not backed him and not allowed him to have a real logic and a real rationale behind him, but just a violent.
Right, it would be easy just to dive into the badness of him and kind of wallow in that and exploit it, but you'd never have a sense of any human being there. Yeah.
It seems both of your characters are going to have a lot of secrets. It didn't seem that from the onset, but your character is, I'm wondering if he has a background with the Pharaohs. And your character is creating secrets as he's moving along in the pilot.
Mm-hmm.
So can you talk to that just a little bit?
I think there's a lot to learn about these people, you know. There's a lot to dig at with them. There's grit in them, you know. And for me, that's really interesting. And it's great to be telling a story over such a long period of time, because we can toy with this past and play with it, play with the history of these people, and they are complex histories. Yeah.
You know, I think really every character, if you do it right, and if it's an attractive character, they all have a secret, and sometimes you get told the secret, and sometimes you don't. But this is a world that definitely is secrets are a big part of it, and having them revealed or not revealed is going to be part of the storytelling. And you know, I clearly am my character creating some things that I would need to keep secret, and we'll see what happens, you know, with those things. But you know, just watching you and what you do, you know, that's part of what is so compelling about watching you and your character is what you're responding to. Is there is something there that we really want to know. It's what makes you so fragile, what makes you so in tune with that thing up on that mountain, and that's, you know, that's gonna be a big part of the draw to this show.
And finally, since this is such a new show and it's a new world for viewers, how would you sell it to the audience?
I don't think that's my job personally. I don't know. I woun't know how to sell it other than to tell the story as well as I'm able to.
Why should people tune in?
Because I think it's a story about. I think it's a story about really. I think it's a story with a great sense of humour. I think as we go further and further into the show, you'll see a great sense of humour, a great sense of irony, and a really driving engine of plot at the centre of it all, that's pointing these characters towards an inevitable confrontation. And where they're going to be at when that happens, I think is interesting, because they are attempts at really realistic depictions of people, and with a lot of factors, and to do with their family, people who are trying to negotiate family and find their place in their own family, and trying to be good, people who are trying to be able to stand behind their own choices. and justify them and do right.
Yeah. And now, I think one of the things about a series, if you do a new series, you either want to show something we've seen before in a new way, or see something new that you haven't seen before. And I think there's a little bit of both in this. I think there is, the feral world up on top of that mountain is a world we've not seen before. We may have seen things that feel similar from books or movies, other TV shows, but the way it's all come together, this is not something we've seen before. And the world of seaweed down below, we think we've seen Appalachia. We've not seen it this way before. So we really do get both those things.
Hopefully, I mean, that was certainly a mission of mine with that part of the story that's set down in the town, is to give a version of Appalachia and to talk about some of the issues that are facing a place like Appalachia, and Appalachia specifically, and to give them some real weight, to give them some reality,
Yeah.
and to give some dignity as well to those people.
Yeah.